Guys, I'm Beck Cranford, and I'm a woman who preaches. And today we're going to talk about Matthew's Gospel, chapter 11. But before we do, we're going to reference the book of Isaiah quite a bit because Jesus uses the prophets to back up a lot of his statements. As we get into 11, we see a little bit of a controversy erupting with John the Baptist's disciples and Jesus. John is in jail. He's, got in trouble with the state for giving the authorities the whatnot on their particular corruption. We're just going to pause here and think about corruption in the government. Okay. All right, I think that pause is long enough. But anyway, so it was appropriate in Jesus's time. It was appropriate in times before in the prophets, and it's echoed again throughout modernity and even today as we see vast amounts of corruption and oppression being playing out on the world scene. So Jesus is using the prophets as a base text when John kind of comes at them, and John's disciples are like, "Are you the one to come? We don't know." You see, when John went out and he baptized Jesus, he said this is the one that, is coming, and he was talking about kind of this fire, and there was this eschatology that was built out that they thought Jesus would be the one who would bring about fire and judgment and send everybody to HE double hockey sticks. Not really, because hell didn't exist, but they wanted to say that hell was like a place of punishment and or turning purification. Remember, fire in the Bible is purification and kind of a cleansing, right? Fire is cleansing. But we don't see that happen here. What we do see is Jesus start to reference Isaiah, and then he starts talking about John, and he says John is likened to Elijah, or Elijah come again. Pause. You're going to be like, wait, what is happening? Is this reincarnation? Is this what Jesus is talking about? I just want to say on a little side note here that in the Kabbalistic practice, in certain Hasidic groups, as well as other Jewish groups, there was a belief in a type of reincarnation. I'll try to figure out what that term is and then bring it back into this video later for you, so you'll be aware of that. What was Jesus pointing to? He was pointing to the fact that John was a prophet. He goes on in chapter 11 and talks about how John is a prophet. And then he starts going back into kind of questioning John's disciples and saying, are not, the blind gaining their sight, or not the sick being healed. And this is all going back to Isaiah, and you'll see Jesus use a chiastic form, which is an X form. It's kind of a literary device to lay out what he's needed there. And then again, he'll say things like from the prophet Isaiah. And it's interesting, when Jesus quotes Isaiah in Matthew 11, he quotes everything from Isaiah, but he skips the parts about judgment, doom, and wrath. This is Jesus skipping the parts about judgment, doom, and wrath. Just think. Okay. The Kabbalistic tradition of reincarnation is Gilgul, which came about in some mysticism in the Zohar. And basically, every soul is here to repair and to heal and to do well, tikkun. And they have certain commandments that they're supposed to do, certain actions, certain missions, mitzvot, that they're supposed to do while they're here. And in Gilgul, if they're not, their soul's sort of basically recycled and comes back again. So we'll dive back into the Gospel of Matthew later and get into the literary things that are happening here. Remember, you don't have to be a Bible bigot, and you don't have to leave your brain at the door. You can be a literary Bible nerd.